coverage.
You're going to wind up with medical practices looking like assembly lines.
Those who worked on the law say they worried about that.
You'd have an increase of demand because we have higher rates of insurance.
But she also says it won't create demand that wasn't already there.
It's not just like we're creating 30 million new patients. These are people who are consuming right now. They're just doing it in an exceedingly inefficient way.
By going to emergency rooms, for instance. The law did create some assistance for aspiring primary care doctors, which medical groups cautiously welcome.
Now, is that enough? That's the question. I think it's a step in the right direction.
One other aspect of the new law is that 16 million who gain insurance go into Medicaid, health care for the poor.
Already Medicaid pays so little in many states that people simply can't find a private physician to see them.
Medicare reimbursements are going down too, and some fear that could make it harder for seniors to find a doctor as well. In Washington, Jim Angle, Fox News.
A federal appeals court has refused to allow gay marriages to take place in California while it considers the constitutionality of the state's ban. Lawyers for two same-sex California couples argued that gays and lesbians are being hurt each day the ban remains in effect. The first major bomb attack on Israel in years. We're live in Jerusalem. But first, a live report from Japan as the nuclear concerns spread.
This program is brought to you by the UPS Store. We love logistics.
The International Atomic Energy Agency says the situation at Japan's stricken nuclear plant remains a serious concern. Reporter Dominic DiNatale looks at the state of the reactor and the effects in the region. Hello, Dominic.
Brett, it is just after dawn on the 13th day of this triple catastrophe here in Japan, and the concern now focusing on reactor number 3, where there is a mysterious plume of black smoke emanating from the plant, and the authorities actually don't know what the cause is, but they have evacuated the restoration crews who've been working on there. It's going to cause a delay in the essential restoration of the electricity supply and also the cooling systems, particularly in reactor number 3 and also reactor number 1. Both of these reactors now exceeding the temperature levels for which they were designed, about 500 degrees Fahrenheit. The utility company running the plant says it doesn't expect a meltdown, and that in fact it will be coming close soon to re-establishing what it calls sustainable cooling systems. It's hard to see how they'll do that because the workers have limited access in terms of getting into the facility due to they can't be there for extended periods due to radiation levels, and also the power that they do have is not long enough, or isn't on long enough for them really to actually get access to the console so they can see what kind of damage they're facing. Meanwhile, down south in Tokyo, tap water has been detected to have high radiation levels, in fact levels twice what it should be for infants in terms of it being safe for them to drink, and the government is advising that people don't give it to their young children. In fact, we're hearing that pregnant women in the city are thinking of actually leaving Tokyo or taking supplies now because the fear that water might become more contaminated in the future. People remaining calm, however, but they do fear that the health risk is in fact going to get much worse. Brett, back to you.
Dominic DiNatale live in Osaka tonight. Dominic, thank you. Oil prices are now trading at the highest levels since September of 2008. April crude added 78 cents to settle at $105.75 a barrel. Prices at the pump stayed at the national average of $3.55 a gallon. AAA says that's up 38 cents over the past month. Stocks were up. The Dow gained 67. The S&P 500 added 3. The Nasdaq finished ahead 14. New home sales fell 16.9% in February to the slowest pace on records dating back nearly a half century. With 3 million foreclosures forecast nationwide this year, experts say a turnaround is not expected for at least 3 years. New communications between the U.S. and Libya, do they explain recent statements about a possible exile? But first, will Britain's royal wedding have an arrival fit for a commoner? That's next in the Grapevine. And now some fresh pickings from the political grapevine. Donald Trump, who is continuing to flirt with a presidential run, is headlining an Iowa GOP dinner in June. Trump was on The View today, and it got heated when he brought up President Obama's birth certificate.
Why doesn't he show his birth certificate? And you know what? I wish he would, because I think it's a terrible pall that's hanging over him. He should show his birth certificate. I can't rely on some newspaper that they show that...
In order to become president of the United States, in order to
I want him to show his birth certificate. I want him to show his birth certificate. There's something on that birth certificate that he doesn't like.
Oh, my God.
Donnie, I love you. I'm telling you.
I love you, too. I think that's the biggest pile of dog mess I've heard in ages.
Florida Republican Governor Rick Scott says he doesn't do email. Local media reports Scott spoke with state employees on Tuesday and told them if they have questions, send him a letter. Quote, I don't have email. It's easier. There's nobody I don't ever get an email that I get embarrassed by that way. So it's not as easy to communicate, but I don't have email. But send me a letter or something. There's a link on his official website to email the governor, but aides tell Fox Scott doesn't check that address. And finally, Kate Middleton will arrive for her royal wedding at Westminster Abbey in the Queen's classic Rolls-Royce Phantom. It's the same car that was damaged by student rioters last December as it carried Prince Charles and Camilla. You may remember that. Middleton said she wanted to arrive in a car like a commoner. However, that car, of course, is anything but common. It is worth over $1.6 million, weighs 2.5 tons, and is one of only 374 ever made. This is a Fox News alert. Coalition forces are carrying out a 5th day of airstrikes, including one on Libyan leader Moammar Qaddafi's compound. One of the compounds, at least. This as Qaddafi's forces are massing outside the rebel-held city of Ajdabiya. Meanwhile, there are high-level talks going on between the U.S. and the Qaddafi regime, which may offer a glimpse, or perhaps a glimmer of hope, toward ending the Libyan conflict. James Rosen has that story live from the State Department. Good evening, James.
Brett, good evening. Fox News has learned that one of the most senior members of Colonel Qaddafi's inner circle, his top diplomat, contacted a high-ranking State Department official this past Sunday night. Libyan Foreign Minister Moussa Koussa telephoned Assistant Secretary of State Jeffrey Feltman, head of the Near Eastern Affairs Bureau, which handles the Middle East. The two have spoken periodically during this crisis, but Sunday's call, said to be general in nature, marks the highest level contact between the two governments known to have occurred since missiles started falling on Saturday. Koussa spent 15 years as Qaddafi's intelligence chief and is believed culpable in many of the regime's crimes, but he was educated in America, and the Obama administration once fervently hoped in this crisis that Koussa would defect. Even in late February, Under Secretary of State Bill Burns, the #3 official at the State Department, personally thanked Koussa for helping to coordinate the evacuation of American citizens from Libya. But Koussa would disappoint the Americans 2 weeks ago. He publicly castigated President Obama for talking, quote, like a child. Koussa's outreach came as the United States ratchets up the pressure on Qaddafi, his commanders and henchmen. On Tuesday, Secretary of State Clinton disclosed some even more desperate overtures.
We've heard about other people close to him reaching out to people that they know around the world, Africa, the Middle East, Europe, North America, beyond, saying, what do we do? How do we get out of this? What happens next?
Including him? Do you know where he is?
Well, I'm not aware that he personally has reached out, but I do know that people allegedly on his behalf have been reaching out.
A State Department spokesman said today the lines of communication between the two governments remain open. Brett.
James Rosen live at the State Department tonight. James, thank you. At least 15 people are dead after Syrian authorities launched an attack on a neighborhood that was sheltering anti-government protesters. The operation in the southern part of the country has lasted for more than 24 hours. 22 people have now been killed since the unrest began there last week. At least one person was killed in the first major Palestinian militant attack in several years inside Jerusalem. More than 24 others were wounded in the bombing. Correspondent Rena Ninan looks at the attack and the shockwaves it has sent throughout the Middle East and beyond. Rena.
Bret, security forces in Jerusalem are on high alert tonight. Israeli police are on the hunt for the perpetrators. There have been arrests in the West Bank and East Jerusalem of suspected Palestinian militants.
This is how silence was broken in Jerusalem today after 7 years of no bombings. Multiple ambulances rushed to the scene to treat the injured.
You can see the aftermath of the explosion just behind me in front of this bus. There was a bomb placed inside of a bag that detonated. The explosion took place in front of a telephone pole next to a makeshift convenience store selling cigarettes and candies, taking place in Jerusalem's central bus station during rush hour.
The store owner was on the phone with police calling in the suspicious bag as it detonated.
Hello? Hello?
He survived but was injured. One female tourist was killed and more than 30 wounded.
The Israeli police had no specific warnings of an attack that was going to take place in Jerusalem today. Since the attack itself, we've heightened security.
The bomb had somewhere between 2.5 to 4.5 pounds of explosives. No Palestinian militant groups have claimed responsibility for the attack, which may have been in response to yesterday's killing of 4 Palestinians in Gaza, including an 11-year-old and 16-year-old boy from Israeli mortar fire. The Israeli military was going after Palestinian militants responsible for more than 70 rockets launched into Israel from Gaza since Saturday.
This latest escalation is the worst since Israel launched an offensive against Hamas in the Gaza Strip in late 2008, early 2009. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will act aggressively, responsibly, and wisely to protect the calm and security. Bret.
Rena Ninan live in Jerusalem. Rena, thank you. Back here in Washington, the National Transportation Safety Board says an air traffic controller fell asleep at Reagan National Airport. The NTSB official tells Fox that 2 planes faced with an unresponsive tower landed using uncontrolled airport procedures. No word yet of the name of the controller. The NTSB is gathering information to decide if a full investigation is warranted. Up next, the Fox All-Stars discuss the military conflict in Libya and the reluctance by the White House to call it a war.
This matter, at the end of the day, is going to have to be settled by Libyans. Qaddafi has basically sworn that he will show no mercy to anybody who has been in opposition. That's not exactly an invitation to negotiate.
We are implementing UN Security Council Resolution 1973. It is clearly a combat operation or combat mission. As the President made very clear, there will be no U.S. Ground forces involved in this.
Well, as the strikes continue in Libya, even at this hour, congressional aides are saying that the White House has told their bosses, the lawmakers they represent, and they work for, that this is not a war. And just flying back from his South and Central American trip aboard Air Force One, the president and his staff coming back, Ben Rhodes, the Deputy National Security Advisor, briefing reporters saying that this is a military operation limited in duration and scope. Pressed, are we going to war then? We are not getting into an open-ended war. It's a very clear set of goals from the transcript from flying back on Air Force One. What about all of this? Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. A.B. Stoddard, associate editor of The Hill, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Steve, they're going to great pains to separate the terminology here.
Yeah, I think this is consistent with the way that the president has handled issues of national security and war and peace since he was inaugurated. I mean, remember, he hasn't given many speeches about Afghanistan. We've expanded our operations there, but he doesn't talk about it much. I think they're uncomfortable basically talking about this. I think when you look at the reaction that you've gotten from Capitol Hill today, from John Boehner and from other Republicans, it's not so much that Republicans don't like that the president intervened in Libya. It's that they don't like how he did it and that they don't like when he did it. They think it was too slow. They think that it's messy, that the post-U.S. command part of the operation is unclear, that there are all sorts of unanswered questions. So it's not so much our presence there, the fact of the intervention, so much as what's happened since the intervention. Speaking about House Speaker Boehner, A.B., that letter he sent up to the president says that there are fundamental questions that haven't been answered, according to Boehner. And at the same time, he says the administration has consulted extensively with the UN and the Arab League. And, quote, "It's my hope that you, the president, will provide the American people and Congress a clear and robust assessment of the scope, objective, and purpose of the mission in Libya and how it will be achieved."
Right. Well, it is understandable that members of Congress wanted to be consulted and not informed, as they were on Friday. While this was underway, we talked here on Thursday night about how many hours that were left before a potential massacre in Benghazi, and even administration officials are now admitting that they rushed through this. What we have now is a fragile and fraying coalition of support, and because